This is the story of Farouk, an undercover operative who foiled what police said could have been one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in UK history. He infiltrated an extremist gang posing as an Islamic State sympathiser and tracked their every move.
All Muslims, they are hypocrites, but the ISIS, they are real Muslims. They make Sharia.
I'm Elaine Wilcox, and you're listening to From the North, an ITV podcast made in the North. We're giving you a ringside seat into 6 months of surveillance, the close calls and sleepless nights for the officer in charge who secured the 3 convictions.
This is one of the biggest covert plot disruptions in the UK for a number of years, and the number of individuals that were involved in this operation and the potential consequences had the subjects being allowed to carry out their plan are pretty unthinkable, catastrophic. It indicated how vociferous and deep-seated his absolutely vitriolic hatred was of Jewish people.
The IS terrorists wanted guns to slaughter innocent Jews, men, women and children in Greater Manchester.
Ready? Go.
Just as the terrorist leader Walid Saadaoui was about to get his hands on AK-47 assault rifles and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, armed officers were ready. In a hotel car park in Bolton, Walid's brother Walid Saadaoui was arrested in Wigan.
Can you just listen to me now, yeah?
I understand.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of being a terrorist. You are suspected of preparing for a terrorist attack in the UK.
So I can't say anything?
High-stakes policing, a successful counter-terrorism operation at its height, involving 200 officers.
I'm Rob Potts, I'm the Assistant Chief Constable with responsibility for counter-terrorism policing North West. The plots that they were seeking to bring off involved the use of multiple firearms, 4 automatic assault rifles, 2 handguns and over 1,200 rounds of ammunition. The plan was to target a gathering of the Jewish community in Greater Manchester. With that level of weaponry and ammunition, it could have been one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in UK history.
So talk us through that as the officer in charge. You've got an operative having to associate and pose as a terrorist too with really dangerous men. How do you handle that?
So what we were looking to do was to try and get as much understanding and intelligence of what was being planned by Walid Saadaoui, who he was going to involve, what material and weaponry he wanted to involve, and what his timescales were and likely targets.
Had you run an operation like this before with an operative in the field?
I've not run an operation of this scale and significance in counter-terrorism. This is one of the biggest covert plot disruptions in the UK for a number of years, and the potential consequences are pretty unthinkable, catastrophic.
Ben Cottam, as you described, the senior investigating officer working closely with you and the firearms lead, he told us about how many sleepless nights he had, thinking, do we go now? Have we got enough?
I wouldn't say this job kept me awake at night, but when I did wake up at night, this was the job I was thinking about, if that makes sense.
This was a 6-month intensive surveillance operation, and it all began with Facebook, social media, what Walid Saadaoui was saying, and that's how the undercover operative got involved.
He had a photograph of Abdul Hamid Aboud, who was one of the masterminds and chief protagonists in the Paris November 2015 terrorist attacks.
That was the red flag. He hero worshipped this man. 130 people were shot. It was a heinous crime.
And in the first communication exchange between Walid Saadaoui and the undercover operative, Walid Saadaoui basically glorified the actions of Aboud, and indicated in his communication to the undercover operative, you should do something like he did, which we interpret as, in effect, you should commit a similar terrorist offence.
He'd said, I can use a knife in an operation, but this will not be enough to take revenge. Only the automatic gun. I want to kill as many people as possible. I have overwhelming anger. He not only planned to attack Jewish people, but Christians too. God willing, after we've finished with the Jews, we'll move on to the Crusaders. For the operative to hear that, and you back at base, that must have been chilling.
It indicated how vociferous and deep-seated his absolutely vitriolic hatred was of Jewish people. He was prepared and keen to kill other Western British people as well.
So you could have arrested him then, and what would those charges have been? And you would have got what? Community sentence, slap on the wrist, or a short prison sentence, but you didn't.
We didn't because we knew at that stage we could continue to allow his plans to continue. We got more confidence as time went on, and it became apparent that Walid was very fixated on his ambitious plan involving the automatic weapons and huge amounts of ammunition.
So when did Farouk get told, the undercover operative, that was the name he used, get told about Amar Hussein, a very different character? He'd served in, he said, in Saddam Hussein's army. He was very volatile in court, shouting out. When did he become part of this plot?
The main time that Amar initially spent in conjunction with the undercover operative was around the Reconnaissance that took place of the port of Dover.
So you were keeping tabs on him here, Bolton, Wigan, and then suddenly they're going to Dover. How difficult was that to keep tabs on him there?
They were going to Dover to look at the security of the port of Dover and to look how vehicles passed and progressed through the security operation at that port. Walid was so meticulous, he wanted to see with his own eyes what process the guns that he was purchasing would come through and needed to come through in order to enter the United Kingdom. So they went with the undercover operative and Amar and Walid travelled down overnight in March in order to actually physically see that as well. They took things to purport to be, in effect, basically tourists visiting the area, binoculars, etc. But those binoculars weren't looking at birds or the countryside. They were looking really closely at how vehicles entered the country.
And by this point, we know Walid Saadaoui had already got a rifle to practice shooting. So you could have had two men, highly dangerous, your agent, one of them with a rifle. Just describe your thought process there.
We had significant resources, including significant armed resources, involved in that operation, supporting the reconnaissance operation.
But again, these were high-stake decisions.
Very much. We did not take risks with anyone's lives, but we were very, very committed to getting the best evidence to protect the public by getting significant sentences.
And how significant was it in keeping the public safe that Walid Saadaoui looked to the Farouk, the undercover agent, to get the weapons?
That gave us a great deal of confidence once we were sure that he was not seeking to source the weapons elsewhere, that we could, in a way, control the operation and control the timescales.
Because there was some suggestion Walid was looking to go to Albanian gangs and buy the guns himself. Would you have had to move in then?
It's highly likely that we would have arrested at an earlier stage in the development of Walid's plot.
But he trusted Farouk. Farouk was going to get the weapons. And then leaving Dover the very next day, they go to the very areas where they said they were going to attack Jewish people.
Walid travelled with the undercover operative. They drove to the Broughton Park, High Broughton area, parked up, got out of the vehicle and walked round. And as they walked round, Walid pointed out to the undercover operative different buildings and different locations in that area, synagogues, Jewish schools, Jewish crashes, and he was identifying these locations as potential targets. He also made clear to the undercover operative that he, Walid, very much saw Jewish children as legitimate targets.
How many weapons were they getting? How many bullets were they getting? They wanted their attack to be bigger and more painful than the Paris attack, where 130 people died.
They were seeking to take possession of 4 automatic AK-47 assault rifles, 2 handguns and 1,200 rounds of ammunition. The potential consequences of an attack involving that level of weaponry and ammunition is catastrophic, unthinkable.
And they were indiscriminate in terms of who they were going to kill.
They were seeking to identify an event, a gathering of Jewish people as being the initial trigger for their attack, with potentially then moving from wherever that is to the High Broughton area and continuing their attack in that area.
And social media again played a part, because Walid Saadaoui posed as a Jewish person on Facebook sites to find these gatherings, these marches against anti-Semitism, the irony of that.
And we think he looked at an event earlier in the summer of 2023 and was in effect looking for a similar event that he would see as the starting point for the attack.
And then the plan was, in the chaos, the trial was told, in the chaos, they'd escape from Manchester city centre in that march and get to Higher Broughton and then kill more people.
Yeah, it was. I think their assumption was the gathering was likely to be the city centre. So you're talking of a few miles in effect to get to High Broughton and identify and target members of the Jewish community, again with firearms.
And you're running an operation with an agent in the field with these plans. When you're in the control room, what was it? What was going through your mind?
We knew that, if you like, the biggest risk, the kind of the catastrophic risk of a firearms-enabled attack involving that kind of weaponry just wasn't going to happen. As long as we kept him in the relationship that he had with the undercover operative. What we couldn't discount was that something might happen that would result in Walid or Amar, or both of them, carrying out, in effect, a much more low-tech, as we call it, spontaneous attack, particularly if they felt that their plans had been compromised in some shape or form. So in effect, that was the risk that, particularly at certain times, we knew was the one that we needed to consider the most. And that went into the planning around the operation, the resourcing and the contingency plans that we had.
And their threat was so much more heightened after the October 7th attack in Israel, and their extremism became even more chilling.
Both Walid, particularly, and Amar were both strong supporters of ISIS long before the 7th of October 2023 Hamas attack and the subsequent conflict in Gaza. That said, probably Amar more so than Walid has made reference clearly to Gaza and the conflict in Gaza.
He shouted out in court, didn't he, the time he was told to get back out the dock. What about the kids in Gaza?
Yeah. I've got no doubt that he will have been even more encouraged and motivated based on his hatred of Jewish people following the 7th of October and the events that then followed.
Are you a supporter of ISIS?
Do you want to answer? Yes.
You are?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
No, I don't tell you anything. They are Muslim, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, they are Muslim.
What is it about them that you support?
They are Muslim, they make Sharia. Yeah, they make Sharia.
And tell us about this toxic relationship between Walid Saadaoui, the planner, who seemed to be the mastermind, and this volatile, hot-headed man, older man living above a furniture shop in Wigan.
Yes, they were very different individuals and played very different roles in this plan and this plot. Walid was quite disciplined, quite structured. Amar was much less involved in the planning, but he was enthusiastic. He wanted to take part in an Islamist extremist terrorist attack and was a very willing accomplice. He also, our understanding is, had previous military training in the Iraqi army, and I suspect Walid saw him as bringing some experience and some skills from that time in terms of taking part in the attack. Amar was introduced by Walid's brother, Walid Saadaoui, who had got to know Amar at a local mosque. So Bilal knew Amar prior to Walid knowing him. I think Walid was concerned at times about Amar's volatility, as you describe it. So an example I think of that was that when Walid was due to take receipt of the initial instalment of firearms and ammunition at the car park at Bolton, Walid met the undercover operative alone and did not bring Amar to that handover.
He didn't want him to get hold of the guns.
I think he may have been concerned that Amar may have just wanted to carry out a spontaneous, immediate action and attack at that location, which was absolutely not what Walid wanted. Walid wanted his plan to come to fruition with all the firearms, all the ammunition, and the targeting initially of a gathering of Jewish people.
So the agent is looking out for Walid. Walid is not totally confident in his right-hand man and how dangerous he must be.
I think Walid perhaps doubted that Amar had enough self-control and may have got overexcited had he been present at the time when the initial firearms were handed over.
And when he was arrested, Amar Hussein said he was proud to be a terrorist if it meant protecting Islam. He'd wept with joy when Walid Saadaoui had picked him for this plot, and he thought your agent was one of them, was another extremist, another part of their gang who was going to carry out this killing.
Yes, Amar was unrepentant and really didn't provide any defence. He didn't provide a defence statement, he didn't give evidence in court, and was pretty unrepentant and unapologetic.
But Walid, in court, as we discussed while we were waiting for the jury to consider their verdict, Walid portrayed himself as this affable, hard-working man, very different from what the prosecution was saying, someone who was planning to kill and martyr himself. We discussed it in court, how he seemed to live a double life.
Walid certainly came across as a fairly meek and mild-mannered individual during court, which is such at variance with his conversations with the undercover operative, and you factor in the fact that he considered children as viable targets, but clearly the jury responded to the evidence that they heard.
The jury saw through it, but this was a man who was a father himself. He was a children's entertainer, came from Tunisia, met and married an English woman, ran a successful restaurant, married again, and then was prepared to carry out this attack, kill himself and leave his wife with 2 young children, not knowing any of what was going on.
Walid began to take certain steps and carry out certain actions that we would describe as finishing behaviour, which is indicative of somebody who is planning ultimately for martyrdom. And Walid Saadaoui clearly expected to ultimately die at the culmination of the terrorist attack that he was planning.
He'd written his will, he'd sold his house, his wife was having driving lessons so that she could ferry the children around when he wasn't there.
Yeah. He gave every indication that he was adamant that he was going to do this.
Is it right that he flew to Tunisia to say goodbye to his mum, very much like the arena bombers did. He went to say goodbye to his mum.
That's our assessment of his visit to visit his mum in Tunisia, as you say, which was really fairly shortly prior to taking possession of the first instalment of firearms and ammunition. So that is very much our assessment, and that would be in keeping with the other things such as the will, the driving lessons, the secret safe with the money in it for his family when he was not there.
So how difficult was that for you, knowing this man is getting on a plane and you could lose track of him?
That was one of the more concerning points in time where we had relatively limited control. But as I say, we did assess that his visit to see his mother was prior to potentially martyring himself.
So you suspected he was going to say goodbye and this operation was getting very, very close.
Yes, yeah, and we were very keen to kind of get the final bits of evidence jigsaw in place and make those arrests.
So Al, so you just listen to me now, yeah?
I am listening.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of being a terrorist. You are suspected of preparing for a terrorist attack in the UK.
Okay.
Okay.
So I can't say anything?
Did you understand the caution?
Something related to terrorism, is it?
It's all related to terrorism, yeah.
On what basis?
That's all I'm going to tell you for now.
Okay. Are you recording this?
It's all recorded.
Okay.
You look to your right.
Sorry?
Your right hand side, if you look.
Yeah?
That's the camera there.
Where is it?
Right in front of you, and that hat.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Talking of family, Bilal was Walid's younger brother. They used to meet up often, speak in Arabic, away from their wives. And it's clear from the trial and his messages, he too was a supporter of Islamic State and sympathised with their heinous views.
He supported the Islamic State in a variety of different ways. We identified that. And we think that he was probably potentially, in the early stages of the plan, potentially the second attacker alongside Walid, but then subsequently he indicated to Walid that he didn't want to physically take part in the attack. It is possible that Bilal may have ultimately been recruited had Walid been able to take full possession of all the weaponry that he was seeking to purchase, the 4 AK-47s, because Walid very much had a vision of there being 4 attackers involved in this. We were convinced and were able to convince the jury with our evidence that Bilal knew full well ultimately what was being planned and failed to do what he should have done, which was to tell the authorities to prevent what would have been an absolute catastrophic atrocity had it been allowed to happen.
And we saw quite a lot of his thinking and insight into his home life. He was teaching his stepson how to fire a rifle. He was in the gym with all these Islamic State songs.
As he gave evidence during the trial, he sought to diminish, in effect, his actions and some of his behaviours, but in a very unconvincing way, and clearly a way that did not convince the jury who found him guilty.
And there seems to be the suggestion that he may have been involved. He'd prayed with his brother. Perhaps the fact that his brother wouldn't rule out attacking nurseries, schools and children, at that point he withdrew.
That potentially may have been the factor that made a difference for him, yes. I think Walid would have tried hard to persuade Bilal to get back involved physically, ultimately, but we never reached that stage, so we will never know.
So you had 3 men, AK-47s, hundreds of rounds of bullets, and your Chief Constable said this is probably one of the most difficult, dangerous policing operations you can get.
This was certainly the most challenging operation that I've been involved in my policing career. The key thing was establishing the relationship that the undercover operative had with Walid Saadaoui, and that confidence he was able to build in Walid gave us the level of information and understanding that gave us confidence to allow the operation to continue the way we did.
How skilled an operative was he and how brave an operative was he, Farouk?
Very skilled and very brave, basically, in short. He was putting himself at risk by being physically with terrorists planning what could have been one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in UK history had they been successful. He was absolutely vital. He was instrumental to our overall operation. And the reason we've got the convictions, the reason we're going to get the sentences that we get in relation to these subjects is because of the work that the undercover operative did.
Some of us have been watching The Night Manager, and you see handlers, you see those decisions, backroom decisions, and even just watching a television programme, it can be heart-stopping.
I think the main thing we were thinking about is trying to get ahead of Walid and trying to work out what his next step's going to be, where he's going to go, and try to anticipate anything that might increase the risk. And we do that in different ways, and ways that sadly I can't talk to you in detail about, but we were trying to get into the mind of Walid.
And be able to have that confidence to see him walking around the Jewish areas of Manchester, a real concentration of Jewish businesses, shops, schools, nurseries, pointing out the places where he wanted to kill.
Yeah, we understood exactly what they were planning to do and were doing on that day. We obviously had contingencies in place, but again, that insight into what Walid's plans were and what he was seeking to do gave us the ability to allow the operation to continue, even during something as concerning and potentially risky as that may have seemed.
And it all stems back to the fact, had Walid Saadaoui not been boasting about his love of the mastermind behind the Battleland, the Paris attack, you wouldn't have known this was even happening.
So he wouldn't have gone on our radar in the way that he did. I think there is a very, very strong chance that had he sought to arrange and make plans for an attack such as the one he did, that we would have likely been able to find out and intervene. But I don't think he would have been able to make plans around a quite a sophisticated attack involving automatic assault rifles and the volume of ammunition that he had without counter-terrorism policing identifying that this was an individual posing a threat.
But because you were able to track him, get all that intel, you're able to put him away for a long time.
Without risking the lives of the public, yes.
Talk to us a little bit about the role of the undercover operative, because they have to get on the inside and pose as being like-minded, as a terrorist, hating Jewish people in this instance. But there's a fine line in case you're accused of entrapment, encourage them, the defendants, to do something that they may not have done had the operative not been there.
Yeah, you're quite right the way you describe it. I can't talk in detail about how undercover operatives operate. It's absolutely critical that they do not in any way lead the activity. They have to show a level of support in order to do what they do, but they cannot lead.
And if they're shown to have led, that case could have collapsed and those defendants would have walked free.
It'd be highly likely that the case would have collapsed had it been judged as entrapment.
There are lots of conversations taking place about how he keeps in with them, how he keeps them on side, how he gets the weapons.
It's only deployed where it's strictly necessary and proportionate based on what it is we are trying to tackle.
And operationally, your undercover officer was getting the guns so he could keep control. You didn't want these dangerous men, these terrorists, getting guns from other people.
No, we didn't. We wanted to make sure we were supplying the firearms and that we could do so in a way that meant that there was no risk to the public from Walid Saadaoui and Amar Hussein. All we focused on is ensuring that we maintain the safety of the public and very carefully engineered that point where the handover of weapons was taking place in a car park in Bolton on the 8th of May, at which point Walid Saadaoui, who was taking possession of the firearms and ammunition, was arrested, and pretty much simultaneously the plan was to arrest Amar Hussein and Walid Saadaoui. They were both in different locations, so there were 3 separate teams carrying out those arrests, and as soon as we had sufficient evidence from a Crown Prosecution Service perspective, we're going to arrest straight away, because we wouldn't allow it to run 1 second longer than that, because there was no need to take any risks.
And we see on the arrest footage, Walid Saadaoui runs. That's his first reaction, and he's taken down.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, he did.
And those weapons had been deactivated and were safe in one of your vehicles.
Yeah, they weren't firearms that could be fired, and the ammunition was inert. I really emphasise that point. Things can sometimes go wrong in these situations, and we weren't going to do anything that risked placing a viable live firearm with live ammunition into the hands of a would-be terrorist.
Did you expect him to run?
I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised he ran, but he didn't get far.
And when did it dawn on him, this man Farouk, who he thought was one of him, a terrorist, wasn't? He was one of you.
Do you understand what's just been said to you?
Yeah, he said to me he's an undercover.
Yeah. Just have a think about that. Let that digest. Yeah.
What I said was the truth. I'll stick to what I said.
It was during interview, ultimately during the interview process of Walid Saadaoui, at a point in time that information was introduced, and he looked a bit confused and dazed at that point in time. He didn't particularly change what he was saying in interview, but I think it's because he'd not been able to process that information particularly effectively in the moment.
Describe that moment for the officers who were able to break that news to him.
I've not specifically asked the officers about this, but I suspect they quite enjoyed that moment, because it's a bombshell moment for a case of the nature of this.
Any normal person would think, it's over, I'm caught red-handed. But he seemed to flip into that persona of, I'm a nice guy, I couldn't possibly do this.
He did, and he offered it over the course of the time post his arrest. He offered a range of different defences, including that it was some illicit mobile phone supply operation that was being involved in, through to it being an entrapment case involving the undercover operative overreaching their involvement in this.
Was that a bit galling?
We were confident, based on the work with CPS, that we had very much not gone anywhere near entrapment.
Was that a bit of a nervous time for all of you who'd been involved in this for the last 6 months?
We were confident that we'd worked closely with CPS in order to make sure we got nowhere near that, and I won't lie, we were pleased and very relieved that the judge formed the same view.
At what point was Amar Hussein told that he'd been duped to by an undercover police officer?
So he got that information whilst in custody, again going through the interview process. Amar's just a very different character, in many ways more honest about what he believes and more open, and as I've said earlier, unrepentant for his views and his attitude. So it didn't really make a big difference to him, other than he obviously was pretty unhappy about the actions of the undercover officer, and that came out in some of the things that were said in court.
Greater Manchester's Chief Constable Stephen Watson described these men as extremely dangerous terrorists, a massively high-risk operation, and said we owe a huge debt to those in charge and to Farouk taking these men off the streets.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about the undercover operative. His actions were very much the foundation of this job. His bravery, his professionalism was what the job very much kind of relied on, and we would not have had the opportunity to carry out the investigation that we did and to secure those charges and those convictions without the actions of the undercover operative.
And is he safe now?
Yeah, he's safe. He's safe. I can't talk about who he is, where he is, and what he's involved in, but he is safe.
People will be relieved to hear that, given what he's done and the personal risk he put himself in to keep the wider public safe.
Very much, which is why we don't share details in relation to undercover operatives, and we do everything that we possibly can in order to protect their safety, given the nature of the work they do.
And for you, what's the message from this case to these extremists, those wanting to kill and maim and those knowing about family members wanting to do that?
We will work ceaselessly, day and night, to stop you, and wherever possible, prosecute you with the most serious offences, the most serious charges, in order to incarcerate you and protect the public. To members of families that perhaps know about something but don't act on it, you're likely to go to prison for a long time. You have the opportunity to save innocent lives, and it's your duty to come forward with any concerns you've got. I think the final thing I'd say is around the public, which is we need your help and we need your information. If you have concerns about anybody, if you think anybody might be at risk of getting involved in terrorism, potentially planning any form of attack or any form of behaviour that is going to harm someone, your duty is to tell the police as soon as you're aware.
And in terms of the Jewish community, for them, hearing this terrible attack, the trial started just days after the Heaton synagogue attack. The jury went out to consider their verdicts after the Bondi beach attack in Sydney. The Jewish community everywhere, but particularly here in the Northwest, feel scared, feel abandoned. What's your message to them?
Okay, so you're quite right to cite the Heaton Park attack on Yom Kippur and the Bondi attack during Hanukkah celebrations in Australia. Terrible, appalling events that kind of bookended almost the trial that took place in relation to Walid Saadaoui and Amar Hussein and Bilal Saadaoui. The message to the Jewish community is we stand with you. We are here to work with you and help keep the Jewish community safe.
You work closely with the Jewish Community Trust, and they fundraise to be able to provide their own security. They had security guards at the Heaton Park synagogue, and that didn't stop the attacker. And they've described these extremists with their warped ideology as like Nazis. They want a scapegoat. The arena attack, it was young teenage girls. Now it's Jewish people. Who could be next?
That's a very big, very big question. We know, sadly, that there are many people with prejudices and hatred for all manner of reasons, none of them good. And of those individuals, a very, 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 very small percentage of them will consider acting in the real world sort of on their hatred. But one person is one too many.
Now, Walid Saadaoui told Farouk, your undercover operative, on his very first meeting, he was scared of incarceration. He didn't want to go to prison. He'd rather be killed. The irony here is his fate was sealed by the very man who posed as one of them. And does it give you some comfort or some enjoyment in the fact that this dangerous man didn't want to go to prison, but he's going to be in prison for a very long time?
It does. It saddens me greatly that there are individuals in this country that are so possessed with hatred and vile towards different communities, in this case the Jewish community, that they would want to plan an appalling atrocity such as this, catching somebody, charging them and getting them imprisoned for a long period of time is why we are here, to disrupt these plots, to stop them happening, to stop people being physically harmed, and to put people away behind bars for significant periods of time.
And do you hope those who perhaps might be thinking of following in their footsteps, killing themselves for some kind of martyrdom, that you're on them, you're watching them, and you'll take them down?
I hope they look at the prison sentences that these subjects get, and I hope they consider the impact on the families of these individuals that their actions ultimately have had. They planned to destroy lives, but in many ways they've badly harmed the lives of the people closest to them.
Walid Saadaoui, a father of two, his wife left now. Either way she was going to be left. He was either going to kill himself, now he's in prison, and she has to tell their children what their dad was planning.
I can't believe that Walid Saadaoui wanted this legacy for his children. Only he can answer for his thought processes around this.
Although there is a quote where he says he hopes he wants his children to be able to train and follow in his footsteps, which is just even more chilling because these are young children.
Yeah, it's deeply sad, and I think it speaks of his obsession with ISIS and everything that ISIS stand for.
ISIS, we're told, is on the rise everywhere, and it's ingrained in parts of our community. How do you tackle something like ISIS, Islamic State, sympathisers, supporters here living amongst us?
We need information, we need intelligence, we need the public to report concerns around individuals at the earliest opportunity to give us the best chance of doing what needs to be done.
You've had high praise from the Jewish community, from your bosses, the Chief Constable. What does it mean to you and your colleagues when you see these convictions and long sentences?
It means we're confident we've done our job in this case. We would love to do more jobs like this, but we would prefer to live in a country where people weren't planning these forms of attacks. We know that we've protected people, we know that nobody's been harmed, and we know that very dangerous individuals are going to prison for a long time. So that's a good feeling. It's sad that that's required, but we know it is at the moment.
And at its height, you had 200 officers working on this.
And on that day, the operation spanned right across the country from the port of Dover through to the northwest of England.
And did you have a beer afterwards?
I think I had 2.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of From the North. We'll be back with another very soon. But in the meantime, you can find more episodes and subscribe to our channel wherever you get your podcasts from.